Jamaica is a highly prospective target area for different kinds of deposits in an island arc terrain.
As probably the most widespread, intensive, and in-depth exploration program that's ever been carried out in this island.
5 or 6 years worth of work into just 2.
No one else has ever done this before. There has been historic work on the island, trending back 150 years.
I think they're getting excited, as we are, so stay tuned.
Welcome to Minds and Money keynote panel discussion, a live Golden Triangle update. Where are the best opportunities for investors? British Columbia is a storied mining jurisdiction because of the Golden Triangle. In this northwest sliver of the province, mining goes back over 100 years. The Golden Triangle is home to some of Canada's great mineral discoveries, such as the Eskay Creek gold deposit. Discoveries in mining continue up to date, with Pretium's Brucejack and Newcrest's Red Chris being notable examples. My name is Michael McCrae, Mining Audiences Manager here at KITCO. KITCO, your #1 source for precious metal news. Panelists are the following: Cole Evans, CEO of Enduro Metals, a junior operating in the Golden Triangle; Kai Hoffman, Chief Executive Officer of Oreninc; Gwen Preston, editor of Resource Maven; Lawrence Roulston, Managing Director of West Bay Advisors. We like to have a discussion with our audience, so please communicate with us. I will be looking at the questions, so they're moderated, and then we can get them back to the panel. I think we should start off, though, with the fundamentals. Cole, I wanted to hear from a geologist. Can you tell us, what is the Golden Triangle? Maybe you can describe what someone would see if he flew into the area, and generally what's unique about the geology.
Absolutely. Michael, thanks for putting this together. This is great. And everyone else who went in behind the scenes to put this together. Yeah, so really you got to start, and let's look at it from the highest level possible. And you have this Pacific Ring of Fire that encompasses all South America, your Chuki, your Escondidas, right up through the western coast of North America, your Highland Valleys, Pebble, down and through the coast of Asia, Grasberg. The list goes on in the type of deposits. Essentially, the Golden Triangle is an area of northwestern British Columbia, just east of the Alaskan Panhandle, for those familiar with what the map would look like. That is one of the most well-endowed mineral districts in the world along this Pacific Ring of Fire. And it goes back into, so geologically, of course, this is a overly simplified explanation of how it will go. So I know there'll be some geologists looking at this cringing, saying, but it ties into something that we call an arc environment. And there's two really important things to understand about the Golden Triangle in its particular arc environment. These arc environments have a wide variety of deposit types. So as you mentioned before, Red Chris, this is your copper gold bulk tonnage porphyry deposits. And then we compare it with Brucejack, the other one you mentioned, which is of course a high grade epithermal, vein type gold system. But then we also see other ones, Eskay Creek most notably, which is what's known as a VMS deposit, or a volcanogenic massive sulfide, where you have high-grade gold, silver, as well as base metals. So you're getting a wide variety of different deposit types in a small area because of that unique geology. And the second thing, from a general scientific knowledge, is there's 5 known mineralizing events in this particular slice of the world, and what makes it so rich. And that stretches through all. I mentioned a couple different deposits, but there's far more over this few 100-kilometer long area. So you have the variety of deposits, and you have the 5 distinct mineralizing events that have created a perfect storm, so to speak, to make it one of the most well-endowed mineral districts in the world.
Just to step back, Cole, as well, too. I mean, a heavily mountainous area. If somebody's flying into that area, lots of snow, lots of ice, and it's hitting all of the rain that's coming from the Pacific coast.
Absolutely. And that's, for me, it's important. That's an important thing to bring up, Michael. You're not in Kansas by any means, with a sense of topography and the logistical challenges. But, like I said, I've said to a few people before, I think that's really what one of the biggest opportunities of it is, because one, people can be shied away just from hearing that. That eliminates a quarter of your competition. Perfect. And the rest is it comes down to creativity, and it comes down to infrastructure, particularly in the in the latter few years, billions of dollars being spent. I'm sure we'll touch on that more later, but is what's kind of really opening it up today.
The panel discussion is talking about opportunities, current opportunities in the Golden Triangle, but I think it would be important if we kind of frame this and then went back and then really talked about some of the top hits and really why this is such a storied area. Lawrence, I mentioned at the beginning Esque, but can you talk a bit more about, why this is such an important area historically?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to touch on Cole's last comment there, and your question about the ruggedness and mountainous terrain. If it was easy, it would have been mined out a long time ago. So that's certainly has provided the opportunity for us. But look at absolutely, it's a long mining history in the Golden Triangle. The Premier Camp has produced a couple million ounces. It produced for 80 years, starting in 1919. And 60 million ounces of silver, as well as a couple million ounces of gold. Escave has been mentioned a couple of times. That was one of the top silver mines in the world for many years. And that silver was a byproduct of the gold production that came out of Escave. It averaged over the life of mine in excess of 45 grams of gold, 2,400 grams of silver. One of the richest large-scale deposits ever. The Red Chris mine that was mentioned, Newcrest stepped in there, paid almost $1 billion to take control of that deposit. It was originally seen as a smallish, near-surface porphyry. And of course, Newcrest is seeing it now as a massive deposit with deep roots. They're looking at going down 1 kilometer and mining it by block caving. And then right next door to that, just on the other side of the highway, Newmont has just bid to take over GT Gold, which has the saddle deposit over on that side, which looks like it might be part of that cluster of related to Red Chris. And but the big one over the last year was Tudor's success with Treaty Creek, and they've been operating up there for years and years, and people didn't pay a lot of attention to it until this last year. And Tudor has enjoyed a tenfold increase in share price on the basis of their success there. They recently announced an initial resource of 24 million ounces of gold in the ground. And putting that in a perspective, if you put a 15-kilometer diameter circle that incorporates Treaty Creek, so that would include Seabridge's KSM and Snowfield. So if you add up Kerr, Sulphurets, Mitchell, Iron Cap, Snowfield, and Treaty Creek, there's 166 million ounces of gold, 52 billion pounds of copper, and 860 million ounces of silver in a circle 15 kilometers across. So just to really emphasize on the incredible richness and, as Cole was saying, incredibly well-endowed part of the planet. So that's, just to give a flavor of the potential that can come out of exploration in the Golden Triangle.
Gwen, I noticed you've covered the Golden Triangle extensively. It's in our backyard. It's in British Columbia. Following on from Lawrence, I want to get to the juniors, but also what is remarkable about the area, in your opinion, and also just what is there? What makes it such a compelling area for juniors as well as minors?
I mean, it's such an interesting area to consider as an investor. So, Cole and Lawrence did a fantastic job there sort of laying out why the geology is so interesting, why the topography and access has actually left the area relatively underexplored. It's just darn hard to get to large parts of it. And that has gotten easier over the years, but it still remains challenging to get to big parts of it. And then the endowment. This place is very rich with a wide range of deposit styles. So that leads to a couple interesting factors for investors, I would say. So one of them is it can be pretty hard to understand what the goal is just for a company in the junior space that's exploring up there. If you're just an investor who's not, fairly familiar with this range of geology that's up in the Golden Triangle, you really have to dive into each company's idea, their geologic premise, to understand what it is they're trying to achieve at their project. Are they looking for a red Chris? Are they looking for a Brucejack? Are they looking for an SK? Are they looking for some sort of hybrid? Are they looking for nickel? All of these things are underway by all sorts of different companies all over the Golden Triangle, sometimes right beside each other. And, different companies have different abilities to communicate their premise. So I think first for an investor, you got to know what the company's doing, because the Golden Triangle is very rich, but there's a wide range of things and that they could be looking for. And to search for each of those things requires a different approach, a different amount of money, right? A different, geologic set of expertise. So know what it is that you're looking for is sort of one thing. And then another big thing is the seasonality of the place. I mean, you really can only explore in most projects in the Golden Triangle. You can only explore, you get on the ground sometime in June, and you got to be out of there in October. And in some places, it's even shorter than that, right? If you're up high and the snow comes early. Last summer was a particularly foggy foggy season. And so, even in that short time frame, the number of active days that they could run helicopters, which is how a lot of these projects are accessed, was pretty limited. So that is a real challenge for the market side of these stories, because, you only are able to get news out from this part of the season. As it turns out, lab delays mean that those results then took most of the rest of the year to come out, for better or worse. But anyways, you can only work for this part of the season. So that presents a big challenge for everybody involved, for the company, who would, of course, rather be working all the time, and for the investor, who has to decide what to do about a project that perhaps they really like, but it's, January, and now the project is going to be quiet for a few months because the news has come out, and the season can't get started again for almost half a year. So these are just some of the sort of layers of consideration that investors have to approach. Now, there is huge investment success stories up there, right? I mean, Lawrence mentioned Tudor, GT, when it first hit into its success at its shares went up. I don't know what it was, more than tenfold for sure. I think, yeah. There have been many such examples up there of share prices that have gone through the roof on discoveries. And that's because there is a wide investor awareness that this area has immense geologic potential and is underexplored. And that means it's ripe for discovery. And that's why so many investors really get engaged. So if you're an investor interested in the space, I'd say understand the company, what they're trying to do, what results you're actually trying to get at, and then really be aware of that seasonality. And I counsel, that means getting in at around this time of year. It's March. They won't actually start exploring for a couple months yet, but people start buying now in anticipation of that exploration season. So share prices rise in anticipation of results. And that can be a pretty reliable game to play as an investor. So really pay attention to what it is that a company is looking for and sort of how the seasonality plays into a share price performance. I think those are two sort of factors that investors need to consider.
I want to get into that point further, just regarding the challenges and also kind of broadly the regulatory environment in the province for being a junior in the area. Gwen, I like the point that you said about the types of juniors out of the area and what the premise is. Do you have a particular type of bucket, you might say? I know that there's a lot of juniors, there's a lot of exploration activity up there, but is there any type of broad buckets that you would kind of put the various types of exploration and junior plays up in the Golden Triangle?
I mean, I think rather than categorizing them by maybe deposit, so, okay, you could either categorize them by what it is that they're looking for. So are they looking for a porphyry, or are they looking for, a high grade vein story? Those will attract different sort of shareholder groups. And the excitement that a discovery hit sparks might be different for one of those versus the other. So I think that those are maybe buckets that you could put them in. Another important distinction is access. So is it a road accessible project? That can extend an exploration season quite significantly relative to an only helicopter access project. Similarly, how like elevation is another factor for how long an exploration season is. So that might also help you sort of, that might play into your decision. Like this is a bucket of explorers up there that I'm not interested in versus this is a bucket that I am interested in. But at the end of the day, I think the most important bucket, and I mean, I maybe sound like a broken record as someone who speaks about investing in junior miners with this comment, but it really comes down to the people. Do they have deep expertise in this part of the world? Because where there's lots of different kinds of geology, you need a lot of geologic expertise to be able to understand, to be able to vector your way through a system and understand which way you're going. Are you going closer to the hot part or farther away? Like, what does this weird rock say? What evidence does it give you, relative to what it is that you are trying to find? And if you have really good people, that doesn't just mean technical expertise, it must also mean capital markets expertise. So some sort of plan to manage the seasonality aspect of that. Does that mean another project down in Mexico? It might. Does it mean a lot of thought put into marketing and what could be done with the downtime, so to speak? It could be that. There's different ways to achieve success there, but you need people who address the challenges of working in this part of the world broadly. And so that, I think, is the most important bucket in terms of the ones that I'm interested in versus the ones that I'm not.
Kai Hoffman, I'd like to bring you in here. There's certainly a lot of people that are doing exploration work up in the Golden Triangle.
There definitely are. And there's a lot of money flowing into the sector as well, or into that little area as well. I looked at the numbers for BC, so I didn't filter it down all the way down to the Golden Triangle, but BC attracted over $630 million in common and flow through financing last year. That's a lot of money. Of course, most of the money went to the the development place, sort of like a Skeena or Benchmark Metals. That was the one I was thinking of as well, because they're developing the Lawyer project. Skeena is developing. SK Mining raised quite a bit of money this year as well. This year, we're looking at a bit of a slow. It looks a bit slower this year to date so far. We've only raised $101 million in common shares of flow through so far. It sounds like a lot of money, but it's actually lower. And I'm quite curious what that's going to mean for the rest of the year. As you said, there is a lot of activity. It also means there is a lot of drilling happening, but also means that labs are overburdened. We're still waiting for a lot of results from some of the companies. They haven't put out any plans yet for this year, and they haven't announced any budgets yet. So it could be that over the summer, hopefully the gold price plays ball as well. We see a bit of a rally again in the area, or more of an interest in the area, and see more financings happening again. But for now, I'm predicting actually a bit of a less financing activity in that region. Lots of companies are active, and then I want to touch on a couple of points that we haven't talked on. Going back to a couple of things is risk in the area as well, and opportunity, right? So there's environmental risk to a degree, which is an opportunity because glaciers are receding, which opens up a lot of a new exploration ground, fortunately and unfortunately. But social risk as well. We've just seen WVU have their permits more or less pulled because the Tahltan First Nation said, no, we're not agreeing to this. And that is something investors should keep in mind as well. And that's really, really important is the First Nations part. They do play a pivotal role in the area because if they are objecting to a project, you don't have a project.
Talking about financings, Kai, I think that the Golden Triangle is really going to be, how would you say, that's mostly going to be a gold play. So if the gold prices are going up or gold prices are going down, that's going to be generally affecting financing into the area.
Oh, for sure. That's an easy statement to underwrite here.
Yeah.
And we've seen, as you say, like Tudor Gold has been mentioned before. I can't believe that with 26 million ounces in the ground, that the market cap is still 550 million Canadian dollars. So I'm curious to see what, I still have to do some more investigating for finding out that reason, why that is. Like, do people not believe that it's going to get built? It's great to have 26 million ounces in the ground, but what can you turn that into? Right. Mm-hmm. That's the next step as well. So coming back to the risks to a degree as well, like that's where the money goes. Can you actually turn it into something? Like I'm not a person for optionality. Like gold in the ground doesn't help me much. Of course, you could probably in these days, and we've been talking about it before, you could probably put a token or an NFT on the gold or something in the ground. But I like projects get developed, and so of course, if gold goes up, there's going to be more interest. Higher capex projects like KSM and potentially Treaty Creek will probably go into production.
I'll put you on the spot here, Kai, but you did mention a number just regarding financings, but and we'll accept a feel on this as well. Was that you said that the financing seemed to be a little softer, but was this relative to financings that were happening worldwide, for instance, or just has this been a recent blip in relation to trends overall?
I think it's more trends overall. We've seen sentiment slow down worldwide. We're still at 1730 gold today, right? But it feels like we're back at 1100. And today, actually, this morning, it's interesting. Like, I live in my own Twitter echo chamber here, apparently. But they're positive. You could touch it, you could feel it. And now gold is down $5 and it's all gone, right? So it's a lot of sentiment.
I'd like to remind the audience that Kai Hoffman runs Oreninc, and that is a tracking service for financing. So if you're looking at the pulse of how the industry is raising money, Oreninc provides that information. You're watching a golden triangle that look at the top exploration plays and the opportunities within the space. I'd remind our audience that you're welcome to submit questions to us, and then I'll be happy to convey them to the panel. Cole, I was coming back where we were just talking about the challenges in the area. We were always talking about, but things that are very important for talking about potential mining is just that you do have the infrastructure there. Maybe if you could kind of take us through it. I mean, there has been some exciting things that have been happening just regarding the amount of mining that has been put into the area, the electrification that has been happening. Maybe you can talk about kind of the pluses and minuses just regarding infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. So within the last 4 or 5 years, new projects coming online on the infrastructure side has been significant. So both in the public, government and private sector, investments has totaled well over $4 billion within the last 10, and that's going from Highway 37, the main access highway into the area, being paved, the Northwest Transmission Line. We had about 18 months ago, Manulife Financial come in and buy out the Northwest Project's hydroelectric facilities from a company who developed it called AltaGas out of Calgary, Alberta, for well over $1 billion. So you're seeing the power coming in, the road. Of course, I got to use an Enduro example. Our project now has the Galore Creek Mine Road and the SK Creek Mine Road are in hydroelectric facility access now bounding it to both the north and south side. And of course, that doesn't just benefit Enduro, that benefits all of us. And a couple other important details to point out, and I'll use Red Chris as a great example in Newcrest coming in there, and Gwen and Lawrence mentioned about block caving. Not only does that have a lot of industry expertise that's come into the area, which I think will tie into the significance of when Kai was talking about, KSM with Seabridge or Treaty Creek. Those two projects, the success of Treaty Creek, don't forget about that with respect to the economics of KSM. Those have a pivotal relationship there. But when you look at Red Chris in itself, why is that significant for me? Is that represents the first and only within the last 5 years bulk tonnage mine to go into production, where they're moving concentrate from the mine, shipping it down that Highway 37 we talked about that was paved, and is being shipped out of the port of Stewart, which I believe is Canada's northernmost ice-free port year-round, right at the southern tip of the Golden Triangle, perfectly placed in Stewart, British Columbia. So it's that combination of factors that's starting to work together, and it's not just talk anymore. You're seeing people do it successfully.
The one thing I kind of like about the Golden Triangle, it seems to be an overlapping region. You have British Columbia, which I could say might be kind of a little bit more careful, but you also have the overlap with the Yukon, which is certainly gangbusters and like a top mining jurisdiction. I mean, Cole, could you talk about the region itself, and anybody else in the panel would be interested in hearing from them as well too, just regarding what it's like to build a mine in British Columbia, or exploration play, I should say.
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's a lot of things to factor in there. obviously with location, Kai had brought up as well, First Nations, speaking for the Tall Tand on that, and there's multiple mines in production within their territory. I know investors can see that as scary news when we mention the double view rejection. And really that comes down to the biggest thing is respect and in appropriate dialogue from companies with the First Nations right from the get-go. And the second thing is it depends where you're at location-wise. I won't get into specific examples just out of respect to a number of different companies, but there are definitely areas, within different First Nations traditional territories that are more sensitive than others. Why I like the, called Galore, Eskay, Sulphurets area in particular is because this is an area that's already identified and flagged for industrial use. There are mines in production there, there's infrastructure going in there. And when we look at the actual, government layers, whether it be transmission, hydro projects, mining projects, this is open for business. And the First Nations support that as well. So that's a very critical thing to look at. When you mention the Yukon, the Yukon is definitely a little more Wild West still than British Columbia, which has its advantages, also has some disadvantages as well. So you're not going to see as many roadblocks when you're up in the Yukon. But I think that the endowment that we're using of British Columbia can really helps balance the playing field.
Thank you, Cole. I want to open it up now to talking about what we see going forward, and then maybe providing a guide to investors, and then looking forward. So, we've talked about the Golden Triangle. We've talked about why it is such an exciting area, what you can actually find, the opportunities that have happened there. If you're talking to an investor, and I'll start with you, Lawrence, if an investor is coming to you and says that I really do like what I see in the Golden Triangle, how would you help them frame it? How would you help them assess and then look at the opportunities there? Because there certainly is a lot of plays that are in the area.
Well, Gwen did a great job of laying out the different categories. And I think everybody has to be clear in their mind what they're after. Do you want an early stage exploration project? Do you want something more advanced, or some combination, or something in between? So that's the first thing to look at. Now, another thing that I just want to throw in here, we talked about the predominance of gold in the Golden Triangle, but let's not forget that the Golden Triangle is one of the few billion-ounce silver districts in the world. And there's been a lot of silver produced. There's a lot of silver in resources now. And to a very large extent, exploration over the past couple of decades has focused on the gold and not paid a lot of attention to the silver. So there's an opportunity right there is to look at the silver component in some of the exploration plays, and companies that might be taking a particular look at the silver side of it. And another point, just to broaden it a little bit, we've talked largely about what's happening in the northern part of the triangle, from Red Chris down to Eskay. And that's certainly where a lot of the attention has been over the last couple of years. But there's a lot happening in the southern part of the triangle as well, which is not as well recognized. And, Cole mentioned Stewart at the southern tip. I think Dolly Varden and Hecla would argue that the tip is a little further south. So the southern part there, the Dolly Varden homestake area, and Hecla's huge Kinskutch project, all of that area has a lot of potential and is not getting anywhere near the attention that it merits. There's other companies that are operating down on that tip of the triangle as well. So those are worth having a look at as well. And I think once results start coming out of some of those programs, it's going to start to bring a lot of attention to the other companies in that area.
Gwen.
I just, this has been a great discussion. When you're trying to, just to sort of add in another maybe layer of consideration for investors, Lauren started out by suggesting that investors need to know what stage of company they're looking for, right? Do they want an early stage explorer? Do they want something more advanced? And then previous to that, we were talking about the various challenges in, operating an exploration program or permitting a mine. And I think it's interesting to pull those two things together. When we were sort of preparing for this panel a bit, one question that we were tossing around was, okay, well, what operating mines are there in the Golden Triangle? Well, there's two, right? Like the number is actually very small relative to the amount of attention that the area gets and the number of exploration projects. And that's because it's a newer area and the access is newer and all of that. That's fine. It's also because it takes a really long time for a discovery to become a mine, right? From, fleshing out the discovery, planning a mine, financing it, and making sure there's support for it and permitting it. This discussion that we just had about sort of comparing Yukon and BC, permitting in Yukon is incredibly slow. Permitting in BC is a tiny bit faster. But, when you're actually talking about permitting a mine. And so I just bring these things in because I regularly have investors who sort of will bring up a company that's maybe made an initial discovery hit, or that has fleshed out maybe a maiden resource at a discovery. And I regularly get the question of, so when will this become a mine? And it reminds me all the time how hard it is for investors who who don't live and breathe this space the way that we do, to really just remember to hold on to, as an investor, to be honest, the point isn't to buy a discovery because it's going to become a mine, because none of us have that investing time frame. Like, I am not going to own a stock for 20 years. I'm just not going to do it. So the point, you have to understand why you're owning the stock. And if it's a discovery play, you're owning it for the discovery part. If it's an advanced asset, what is the argument for owning that advanced asset? Is it near some permitting milestones? Is it near some sort of mine planning milestones? Is it a very clear to you M&A target? Like, a major is going to come in and buy it. Like, you just have to have your specific rationale. And there's lots of different rationales that apply to all of the different companies and targets and stages of project that exist in the Golden Triangle. And the infrastructure requirements and the permitting requirements all sort of layer onto that. But it's really just about understanding what your investment thesis is. And there's a wide range of them that apply in the Golden Triangle.
Let's just talk on a regional basis and then just kind of the location that it's based, Gwen. So if you have an investor that's coming to you and they're comparing something, say, in the Golden Triangle, BC, vis-a-vis, I don't know, something that's down in Mexico, something that's down in Argentina, something that's in Ontario, I think, we're talking about a top tier mining jurisdiction. We're talking about some things that are advantageous and not advantageous.
Yeah, I mean, these sorts of questions come in all the time, right? And they're difficult. They're both difficult and easy to answer. When I'm asked to compare two specific companies, I can poke holes and shine lights till the cows come home. But when you're it sort of comes back to some of those considerations that I think investors really need to decide which ones they're going to decide are important. So seasonality, to be honest, is the first one. If you're going to be engaged in the Golden Triangle, you have to understand that it is a very seasonal setup. They work for a few months in the summer, the results come out for a few months after that, then there's a quiet period, and there's no way around that. Some of the projects that are at very low elevation and on a road, sure, maybe the season is extended a little bit, but it's a very seasonal setup. And so you have to decide as an investor what to do about that and whether that appeals to you. If you're a buy and hold investor, well, you probably shouldn't be investing in exploration companies to begin with, but even more so, you probably shouldn't be investing in Golden Triangle explorers where you have this added layer of seasonality. Versus a project down in Mexico, you can probably work all year round. So that's different. Now, when you're talking about risk, though, seasonality is just one of a long list of risks that explorers face, right? There's geologic risk, there's financing risk, there's commodity price risk, and then there's ability to operate risk. Seasonality is one of the things about ability to operate. There's parts of Mexico where you could get blockaded any day of the week, right? And so there's risks that are, every jurisdiction has its own set of risks, and you really have to decide which ones you are willing to tolerate, and you have to converse with management. The vast majority of management are willing to have a conversation with any retail investor, as long as you reach out and arrange it. I know there's lots of retail investors out there who don't think that they should email Cole Evans because he's the president of a company, but Cole Evans will reply to your email, right? It's like, this is how these things work. So reach out and engage with management, and that will give you a better, hopefully, assuming management is honest, it will give you a better understanding of what the risks are and how they plan to mitigate them, right? That comes back to it. It really starts with the people.
I think we have one more roundabout to go before the organizers come out here and then pull the hook on us. I really did want to bring up issues about infrastructure, because what we're really seeing is that the Golden Triangle is a place that's evolving quickly. You did have, certainly we do have 2 operating mines, but I guess you would say in kind of mining parlance, or kind of recent mines, just considering how long it actually takes to develop a mine, as Gwen was mentioning. And what this has meant is that there's a considerable amount of infrastructure that is being put into the area, and then that is making a lot of opportunities into the Golden Triangle that were not really feasible before. There is a recent announcement, for instance, that you see that Newcrest is going to be putting $100 million into the development of the Red Chris mine. Kai, I'd like to come back to you, and then I know some of the people have been offering on this, but looking forward into the future, and I know you've talked to a lot of juniors, maybe you could highlight some of the, what you would see as kind of the top opportunities in the Golden Triangle.
There's quite a few, and it's like, I don't want to repeat what Gwen said before, right? But again, it depends on your risk, and I think the Golden Triangle offers a very wide variety. We got the developers like Ascot, where I'm trending more towards to at this point in time, because they're about to start. Means in another 12 months, but they're going to put in their ball and sag mill this summer, and they're moving toward. And I'm still figuring out why. But then you can go all the way grassroots, as you said, like the early stage exploration plays. You can start with mapping and sampling. A lot of plays are just exploring areas where glaciers just receded, so you can actually get a first chance at a discovery there. So very early stage, very very big opportunities as well. And then of course you have companies that and we keep coming back to Tudor because I've been saying that, but companies that can add to their ounce potential as well, that are adding to it. There are a lot of companies like we've seen Skeena, SK Mining. They've been adding to it. They're on the right track, but they're not in a development stage just yet. Skeena, I think, is on the verge. They're just about to tip over into the development stage. Also been discussed as a prime takeout target. If anybody wants to make a bet on that, I think Skeena could be a good one in that regard, that there's something happening. SK Mining has a great valuation already. I think they're over $300 million in market cap, but that's a company that could go further along as well. There are opportunities. If you take a map of the Golden Triangle, you can almost throw one. Lawrence mentioned a couple of really interesting ones also. Is like Dolly Varden, for example, on the silver side is quite interesting as well. If you want to play that angle a bit, GT Gold showed us that there's also copper in the area, so that's something you could look at in that space. Company wise, yeah, as I said, Escott is interesting. Skeena as a potential takeout there. Later stage, earlier stage. Trying to think a couple names there. But I think I've been focused lately more on the development stage, quite honestly, because the sentiment is just this tough. Like, as I said, financing said interest waned down just a little bit, but there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of stuff happening. Benchmark Metals is another one. They've been putting out great holds from what I've seen in terms of the headlines lately. They're still of earlier. They're not even developed. Yes, it's brownfield, but it's not development stage. So it's a company adding to the ounces. So you could follow that money. Follow companies that obviously have money, that have plans, but not every company has put out plans for this year yet.
I will remind the audience that we're getting close to the end. We're doing the roundup, but please feel free to submit questions to us, and then I'd be happy to convey them to the panelists. Cole, looking ahead, it looks like the season is going to be starting in earnest, or if it has, you can fill us in. But we're getting close to April right now, so it look like they will start as Gwen was mentioning. There's a re-seasonality to the place, but we will start seeing drill results that will be coming out.
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. And I'd like to come back 12 months from now, and I'll put a challenge here, put my neck out on the line with the respect to the seasonality. In at least at Enduro Metals, we think we can do a lot about that. But yeah, really the field season has already started in an early sense with preparations. It's going to be a really busy year. As far as word on the street, so to speak, even trying to, get drill rigs and have contracts set up right now, it's already difficult to come by. Just what I was dealing with this morning, the random things as a CEO is tracking down the wait times on drill rods and all these different things. So it's a microcosm of, I think, what's to come, and that it's going to be a really busy year. There still are a lot of companies that got money left over in the till from all that financing that Kai was talking about last year, and the financing that's been going on already this spring. So it's going to be a really busy year for a lot of companies, and I think a lot of exciting results to come throughout the Golden Triangle.
Lawrence, yourself, looking forward into the Golden Triangle and future opportunities. We were talking a lot about before is that it's a changing climate. You see glaciers receding, and then you see that is uncovering, how would you say, new land, new opportunities to look at. We also have the infrastructure that is being poured into the area. What would you see looking forward into the Golden Triangle as it develops into a region?
Well, that's an important aspect. When a lot of the first exploration was done in this area back in the 80s and 90s, there was a lot more ground covered by ice. So there's ground now in the middle of this incredibly well-endowed area that has never been looked at. So that's a really exciting opportunity. But another point that I really want to emphasize is that all that work that was done in the 80s and 90s, they went in looking for a snip, and then they went looking for the next Escape, and then they went looking for the next Red Mountain. So hundreds of companies have gone through the Golden Triangle. They've explored little bits and pieces, each time with a particular kind of outlook on what they were hoping to find. All of that information has been documented, and BC has a really excellent system of requiring companies that have mineral tenures to record their work, and after a period, that work becomes part of the public domain. So there are companies that are going through that incredible database of earlier work, pulling together bits and pieces, and it's like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle where you get information from different explorers in a little area, put it all together, and then a picture starts to emerge from it. So that, plus the fact that right beside some of these areas that might have been overlooked, you've got areas that are coming out from under ice cover. So huge amount of potential, building on the work that's already been done, and then projecting that onto areas that have never been explored. Now, another important point that I really want to emphasize here, we've talked about money for exploration coming from investors. And whether it's going to be another banner year like last year, or a little less or a little more, there's another big pot of money that I think is going to start to have more and more of an impact on exploration. And that is the profits that are being accumulated by the producing companies. So with the high gold prices and other metals, there's a lot of cash building up in some of the larger companies. And we saw Newmont taking over GT Gold as one example of a trend that I think we're going to see a lot more of over the next 1 or 2 or more years. And one final quick point here, we've all talked about seasonality, and there's no question the Golden Triangle is subject to seasonality. But from an investor perspective, that seasonality is going to happen. And if you work to advantage, you can use that seasonality to your advantage and buy low, sell high in it. And right now, because we're at the end of last season and haven't started the coming season, prices are down. So there's a kind of a general outlook comment for you.
Lawrence, I'm really glad that you made that point just regarding the cashed up seniors and intermediate companies. We're certainly not seeing a rip roaring like we saw in 2011, but we certainly have seen a drumbeat of acquisitions that have come in to the space. And I get, we shouldn't be too disappointed with gold, as I see kind of in the 1750 or 1730, because that's a lot higher than what we were expecting at the beginning of 2020. I think at this point, I want to wrap it up in case there's any last points that any of the panelists want to make. Going once, going twice. I want to thank our panelists. That has been Cole Evans. He is CEO of Enduro Metals, a junior operating the Golden Triangle. Kai Hoffman, he is Chief Executive Officer of Oreninc. Gwen Preston, she is the resource maven. Lawrence Roulston, Managing Director at West Bay Advisors. My name is Mike McCrae. I'm the Mining Audience Manager at KITCO. KITCO, your #1 source for precious metal news. You have been watching Golden Triangle, where are the best opportunities for investors here at Mines and Money. I want to thank very much the panelists, and I want to thank very much the organizers. Whichever time zone you're in, have a good day.